Hello, I'm Ian Henschke, Chief Advocate with National Seniors Australia, and with me today is Peter Vincent, Managing Director of Aged Care Management Australia. Peter, we hear of the for-profits and the not-for-profits, and there's been talk recently that the for-profits should not be allowed to operate because all they're interested in is a profit. How do you view that?
There's a difference between the for-profit and the not-for-profit sector is essentially in the way they operate and deal with their surplus. The not-for-profit sector are generally made up of the church and charitable groups and benevolent associations. They will retain all of the surplus that's generated through the business and put it back into the business for future development, capital growth and whatever. The for-profit sector will take a margin out of their surplus to pay directors and shareholders. They both receive the same amounts of funding. They both have the same obligations under the Act. The advantage of the not-for-profit sector is that they have significant tax savings because they don't pay payroll tax, they don't pay land tax or rates, so there's a significant advantage to them. As for whether the for-profit sector should be phased out, even though they hold 50% of the market, I think that predominantly they are made up of larger providers now, supported by private equity companies. And if they were to leave the sector, even progressively, it would have a significant impact on the overall ability of aged care to provide services.
But what people want to know is, should I go into a for-profit or a not-for-profit home? So this is, I think, what people are struggling with. Where do you get the best care?
The care, in terms of the split between for-profit and not-for-profit who fall foul of the government and get sanctioned, it's an equal bet.
Really?
There is just as many church and charitable groups and not-for-profits that have sanctions and non-compliance as there are in the for-profit sector.
So on that issue of money, for example, we shouldn't believe that when people are saying they need more money in the area that it's necessarily true.
Well, that's an interesting question. There's two pools of money that aged care deal with. We have what we know, the operating income, which is made up of government subsidies and resident contributions. And you would know that people entering aged care would pay 85% of the full single pension or an equivalent amount if they're a self-funded retiree. That money is used along with the government subsidies to manage the day-to-day operations of the service. So paying staff, food, all of the ancillary services. The other pool of funds is what we call the capital funds, which is made up of what used to be known as accommodation bonds and are now known as refundable accommodation deposits, or RADs. That pool of money is only to be used for capital development and growth within the sector. Sterling Griff, Senator with Centre Alliance, currently has a bill before federal parliament calling for providers to be able to be forced to declare how they spend all of their operational money. At the moment, there's no government regulation that requires providers to demonstrate they're using their money with probity, and they could be spending it on anything and not putting it back into care. Now, before we can go to the government cap in hand and say we need another $40 billion or whatever, I think it's the government owes itself to understand where the money is being spent currently before they can work out exactly how much money, if any, that the sector needs.
Thank you very much.